one other thing I'd like to discuss is just called the Productivity Rebellion podcast, because we both see a real need for an examination in general in the world of what is productivity and how it's defined and what are the components of it and how to improve it, but improve it in a real sense rather than just improving in a number, a calculated number. The KPI for productivity is one of the worst KPIs that's out there, and it can be fiddled in so many ways. So I wanted to get into that conversation a little bit.
Yeah, and I think this is a big one, that it never actually goes away in your career. If anything, it gets worse and it becomes more frustrating, I think.
Yeah.
Especially as you work with, larger and larger organizations that tend to, have a bit more of a forced, bureaucratic structure that kind of sees things a certain way and won't deviate from that. Yeah. And the problem is that starts to inform how everything else in the rest of, the system is rolled out and executed from that point forward, because you're viewing it through this kind of singular lens of this is what productivity means to us, since that's really at the crux of a business that, produces an output. That is the thing that we need to focus on. So if you start with kind of this skewed or wonky view of it, and in the United States, it's a big problem because we have, there's all sorts of different corporate structures. You've got private equity, publicly traded, and they all kind of view it a different way, and they justify everything that they do based on that view of what it is. So it's something that never really goes away. I think people write it off as like, oh, it's just, it's a kind of a philosophical, fantastical, idea that's a certain group of people want to, talk about and fixate on, when in reality, it's kind of an economic driver. Again, if you begin with the wrong idea of it, everything from economic policy to how manufacturing, healthcare, and everything else plays out is flawed from the beginning.
And if you ask most politicians what the definition of productivity is, you're going to get a lot of different answers, a lot of fluffy, wishy-washy answers. And you were talking about this at a company level, often as consultants and trainers, and we are brought into the organizational level productivity problem, and that is to do with throughput and costs and delivery and quality, and you can somewhat get your hands around that. The smaller the organization, the easier it is. But once you roll that up to national economies and international economies, it just becomes a mess. Right? They're trying to count total number of labor hours spent by all people in the whole country in a whole year. And also the total value in dollars or pounds or euros generated by all products and all services in the entirety of the country over a whole year. Now, that measurement system is a little bit flawed, I would say.
And it's you bring up a good point. It's funny because just about every country invests obscene amounts of money in statistics bureaus and ministries and stuff, and then doesn't base the policy on the output of those things. So it's like, what's the point,
Yeah. Yes, the Office of National Statistics is who does it in the UK. They are following rules and formulas that have been dictated years and years ago. I mean, the guys that are working there, probably good guys, they've got good grasp of statistics, but they're having to use them in the strangest of circumstances where, as I say, the measurement system is very flawed. The margins of error on these raw numbers are huge, and then you do the final calculation, and it can become meaningless to some extent. But then you base whole economic policy on it. You base your whole taxation system on it and things like that,
And it's schematically apples to oranges, because again, you're starting off at the microeconomic level. You're starting off with with groups that think this is how we view productivity. This is how we're going to sort of report it up. And lobbyists and so on who kind of influence how it's perceived at the national level. And you've got kind of, again, this is my experience in the US. We kind of force fit these different, a paper mill to a helicopter, manufacturers. Like they're not even close to being the same thing. Their impact on GDP are completely different, and their impact on, labor and jobs completely different, because what they do is completely different. They're not both just producing widgets. They're both in the same, kind of economic sector. But taking this back to the kind of topic at hand, they're fundamentally different systems with different inputs coming from different places, going through radically different production systems that have different needs. So again, to your point, we base industrial policy as a whole, and I personally haven't experienced it in the EU beyond kind of just hearing a little bit about it, but I hear it can be rough.
Yeah.